I love the fact that the water community is non-competitive. If we come up with a really good idea, a really good solution, an innovation, we are absolutely happy to share that with others. And likewise, we are absolutely excited to find out what other people are doing so that we can adopt that into our space. It's critical that we do that. I think the challenge and the sweet spot that we're trying to figure out, and WaterStart's done a really good job of this, is how do we share the results of these pilots and of these innovative solutions that we have trialed so that we don't continue to reinvent the wheel in every single utility. I think that, if you talk to some of these innovators, you get into a situation where it really becomes death by pilot for some of their solutions.
Welcome to Distilled, Conversations with Global Water Leaders. Distilled is brought to you by Qatium. And I'm your host, Will Sarni, founder and CEO of Water Foundry and founder and general partner of Water Foundry Ventures. I'll be speaking to global water leaders and how they're solving wicked water problems. We'll be discussing their career, their current activities, and what the future holds for them. Our guest today is my friend and colleague in the world of water, Dave Johnson. And Dave, you have one of the longest titles in the world of water, so I hopefully will get it right. You are Deputy General Manager of Operations, Southern Nevada Water Authority, and Las Vegas Valley Water District. You must have a big card.
Good job, Will. Sometimes it's hard to get all that in one mouthful. But yeah, we essentially working for two organizations, the wholesaler for Las Vegas and also the largest of the retailers for the Las Vegas Valley. So that's what that represents.
Great. Well, Dave, really a sincere thanks for being on the call. We've had a number of conversations through the years and really value your perspective on what's going on, not just in the Colorado, but also public-private partnerships and really how do we do better with respect to managing our most critical resource. And Dave, origin stories are always important. So could you tell us a little bit about, how you got to where you're at and what was the draw to really being, part of the solution to water challenges that we're facing? Where did you start and how did you get hooked?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Will, thanks for having me. I was born and raised in the Midwest in actually Fort Wayne, Indiana, and decided at a relatively young age, I come from a line of engineers, and so I decided I wanted to get in the world of engineering. Went to Purdue, which was an in-state school for me, and got a degree in chemical engineering and started my career off really working in chemical manufacturing. I was working in basic commodity chemicals, manufacturing chlorine, caustic soda, hydrochloric acid. What I didn't really realize when I first got in the business was some of the basic building blocks for what we use as common water treatment chemicals. Throughout the course of my journey, working in the private sector, which was about 12 years. I had the opportunity to go and visit a lot of different treatment facilities, along with salespeople, dealing with technical issues, that type of thing, and kind of really developed a like for what was happening, kind of a value proposition that I really liked. But I kept on working in the private sector, and I got to a place where I was managing plants, and candidly got a phone call from the Water Authority that said, "Hey, we have an opening for basically plant manager for our treatment facilities." Took that opportunity here within the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and then over the last 20 years or so, I've moved into a position of overseeing operations for both entities. And so really kind of started in the private world, and I'm really glad I made the change. I've seen dramatic change in the water sector since I've been involved. It's been really exciting. So not ever a look back with respect to the decisions that I've made in that space.
So it was truly a draw to a sector that resonated with you essentially.
It really was. Well, I guess I would look at it as though, working in chemical manufacturing was really rewarding, but working certainly where I live here in the desert community in Las Vegas, the value of water, the value of putting the time and energy and effort into being a part of supplying that critical resource just spoke to me. And it has gotten more interesting and more challenging since the day I walked in the door. And as you would call it, some real wicked problems that we are working on facing, but super rewarding as well.
That's great to hear. I'm pretty biased, as you might imagine, but I view it as a noble profession. I have yet to find somebody that's in the water sector that does it begrudgingly. I just have not run across that person. So Dave, you and I have talked about this a lot in terms of, what you are doing, in your position and what the utility is doing with respect to really being innovative in a very constructive way and engaging, the private sector and your colleagues. Can you talk a little bit about what you have accomplished and what you're seeing right now in your unique position, in the Colorado River Basin? And I do want to touch on the whole issue of brand and really how you positioned, your utility and Las Vegas, in a competitive way in the marketplace. So a little bit of where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this on the beginning of talking about what Southern Nevada Water Authority does. It is really a full court press on the part of all of us here. There are many, many people rowing in the same direction within our organization to try to accomplish this goal. So when I refer to things that have occurred and we've accomplished, it's really a team effort, and that's super important to all of us. Will, the other thing that I would also mention is I've been very fortunate to be able to chair the board for Water Start. And Water Start is a critical component of our innovative ecosphere here in Southern Nevada, providing opportunities to do pilots and innovative technologies, innovative solutions, but really, really an important part to what we do as well. So saying that, we've had a culture of innovation for a very long time. We've certainly had the need to innovate with some of the problems that we have faced, and it's been an all hands on deck situation. What we've really done well in the call it the private sector relational space is that a lot of the conservation measures that we have been working on have been broadly applied. We've done a lot associated with our primary consumptive water use, which is removing turf, removing grass, working on watering schedules, landscape irrigation components, because that's our number one source of consumptive use of water here in Southern Nevada. Our second is associated with evaporative cooling. Okay, and that really got us involved with the business community in a whole different way. We worked together over the course of a year's time to put in place a moratorium on evaporative cooling for new installations here in Southern Nevada. Now, that was not an easy thing for us to do. It wasn't easy for the businesses to understand. It wasn't easy for us to implement, but we were very, very collaborative and worked hard to implement that. And that's just an example of kind of how we have partnered with the business community to use technology, to use solutions and innovative thought processes to really bend the curve in thinking. What we have found in this journey is that people have varying levels of understanding of our water system, the issue, And so as we work to educate and we work to find solutions that work for everyone, we really believe that that's going to be a long-term sustainable approach here for Southern Nevada. And so really what that's done by putting in the infrastructure that we have to even be able to access our resource below Deadpool here in Lake Mead, and to do the good work that we're doing in negotiating on the Colorado River and do the hard things as it relates to conservation, we've really taken the concern and the issue around water security here in Southern Nevada, and we've really flipped that over. And what I mean by that is that we've been able to put together, as we have for years, a 50-year resource plan that allows us to be able to demonstrate to our constituents, to candidly the rating agencies, and anybody that might look, that we actually have security of supply in the face of this situation as a result, or instead of a position of being overly concerned about what happens and what might come down the road. So kind of a long way of answering it, but we've really, really worked hard to put solutions in place and to partner with the private sector to change that narrative. And we're excited about that.
I'm glad you brought up Water Start and innovation. And a couple of things is, as an outsider looking at what you do and what you're doing with other stakeholder groups, there's a refreshing level degree of transparency in terms of, taking your knowledge and communicating where you're at with respect to water resources and how you plan to manage that precious resource over an extended period of time. And I view it as really the gold standard in terms of, utilities need to be very, proactive in managing a resource and to be very transparent with stakeholders. And then the second is, I've always believed this, that scarcity drives innovation. So with respect to, cooling towers and, putting constraints on that drives startups to develop innovative solutions, and in turn that drives industry to start looking at different ways of operating with, some constraints on the gallon or liter of water. So to me, that's a really, two critical points in how do we manage a resource that is finite under a lot of stress right now. And you touched on this point. You have flipped the narrative, and I remember no shortage of conversations with people, and they would ask, "Well, don't you think Las Vegas is going to go away because it's in the desert and it's feeling the impact of climate change and increasing demand and so on?" And my personal view, and I view you as an important data point, is that no, you can operate in the desert. You should operate in the desert, just not with the status quo. And, changing the status quo to accommodate, what we're seeing with respect to, surface water availability and so on is how you have a competitive advantage in the marketplace to drive economic development at the state level, business growth, however you define it. So can you talk a little bit about the brand you have built, if you will, and how that's playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of the brand that we've built and part of how we've built it is, we spend what I would call an appropriate amount of time talking about solutions. We try to spend even more time effectuating solutions. Okay, I find that there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of those kinds of conversations that happen, but we need to get down to business and actually do the things here that are going to make our community a sustainable community. I think that through the measures that we have taken, both in the residential space, in the industrial commercial space, and even some initiatives that we are working on right now with the economic development space. I really think that if you look at it broadly and put a plan together, like our 50-year resource plan, and then put the components of our plan that deal with our resource availability and deal with our conservation measures and deal with what kinds of businesses that are beneficial to come to Southern Nevada and some that may not be. And you put that together, that helps you to frame the issue in a way that you can very methodically look at innovative solutions and deploy them in a meaningful way. The other thing that I love about the Water Start model and about what we're trying to do here as it relates to the broader water community is the water. I love the fact that the water community is non-competitive. If we come up with a really good idea, a really good solution, an innovation, we are absolutely happy to share that with others. And likewise, we are absolutely excited to find out what other people are doing so that we can adopt that into our space. It's critical that we do that. I think the challenge and the sweet spot that we're trying to figure out, and WaterStart's done a really good job of this, is how do we share the results of these pilots and of these innovative solutions that we have trialed so that we don't continue to reinvent the wheel in every single utility. I think that if you talk to some of these innovators, you get into a situation where it really becomes death by pilot for some of their solutions. And so that's another component, I think, of being proactive and putting solutions in place. But more to your point, what we have really tried to do with respect to our brand also is to make sure that the business leaders in our community fully understand the issues, fully understand the suite of solutions, and are bought in to being a part of the solution. Whether it's a conversation about social license to operate, or whether it's a conversation about, just the aridification situation in general in our desert community. I think that that's one of the main areas, is helping to understand, putting solutions in place, and building confidence amongst the business community. That's really helped to flip that narrative. And our brand, I think, for those that are kind of watching and interested, is one of a global leader in water conservation. We're striving to be the most water efficient community that we possibly can. Hopefully, the most water efficient community in the world. And we're taking the steps and actually doing the things that are needed in order to accomplish that. And so I think people are recognizing that, and there's still work to be done. There's still hard work to be done by the community. But we're making really good progress, and I think that's becoming more and more well recognized.
That's awesome. I love that you use the word aridification and not drought, by the way, because that gets to me to the heart of the transparency issue, that yes, it is in fact aridification, and as a result, we need to be proactive over some extended period of time. And you brought up another really good point about, utilities are really not competitors in the scheme of things. And so by the very nature of a utility or the utility community, sharing best practices in a lot of ways comes easy, compared to, I would say, manufacturing companies and so on that actually have to collaborate in a pre-competitive space. So it's, I think, a really important point about transferring knowledge back and forth between utilities to come up with solutions that are really viable. So, Dave, your 50-year plan, and let's take out the crystal ball. Where do you see this going? Do you think we're going to see more decentralized solutions, alternative sources of water? What does innovation look like, over the next several decades?
It's a great question. I would just say, kind of on the construction side, let's call it, of our 50-year plan, we definitely believe and have baked in climate implications associated with our 50-year plan. So when we put our plan together, we're actually looking at the impacts of climate as a headwind that we have to face. And also looking at population growth associated with Southern Nevada, and also the resource situation. What I really see is a portfolio approach. We've got to look at everything. For instance, we are currently partnering with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California on their Pure Water project, which takes water that had been going out to the Pacific Ocean and recycles that within Southern California. Our board made a decision that we should put funding, and we have that in our actual capital plan, to financially participate in that project in exchange for some of Met's allocation of Colorado River water. So a really interesting solution that does not require us to put in, 200 miles worth of pipeline. It doesn't require us to put in significant infrastructure to convey water or a desal facility. And of course, we don't have any coastal presence here in Southern Nevada. But an exchange mechanism. It's something that we're working on as an augmentation strategy. So we've got to look at augmentation strategies, and we've got to see if there becomes a viable opportunity for us to go into the desalination. We've got to continue to drive on our conservation approach, and we've got to look at all of the things that we can do to become as water efficient as possible. And I think that as I look in the crystal ball, it's going to continue to be a multi-pronged approach, given the specific issues that we have here in our community dealing with this issue. And I think we're up for the task. I really do, based on what our community understands, and our political will that we have here, and really a culture of innovation in the organization. I really feel like we're up to the charge. Not that it will be easy, but I think that's going to be our best approach.
Mm-hmm. I love how broadly you defined innovation, not just technology, but partnerships, collaboration. I was unaware of what you're doing with Metropolitan, but, I think that is absolutely brilliant, for so many reasons, in terms of really rethinking, collaboration as a way to, address your needs and address theirs. So kudos on that one. So Dave, I really appreciate this conversation. You're always good for inspiration. So any closing thoughts in terms of passing that on to the audience with respect to, solving water together?
Well, and, my only thoughts are, you did a great job of leading into this, because it's really together. We tend to, in the water space, operate too much in a vacuum. We tend to believe that we have to come up with innovative thoughts, solutions, and remedies all by ourselves. And there's such a broad community of experts out there that are passionate about doing this in a non-competitive industry, mm-hmm. that I would just say that that's available to people. Reach out and use the resources that you have. And the other thing I would just say to all that are listening is the water space is a super exciting place to make a career. When I came into the industry 20 years ago, it looked very different than it does now. I would have never dreamed that I would be working alongside casino leaders and economic development leaders, and residential HOAs, and working to modify behavior. As a chemical engineer, not really trained on that. You kind of pick those skills up as you go, I guess. But what a great career! What an exciting adventure! And it really, obviously, I'm speaking on the Southern Nevada front here, but every different jurisdiction has its own challenges and also has its ability to solve those challenges. And I would just say that it's a really exciting and rewarding space to be in. And I think even though we face hairy challenges or wicked challenges, as Will would say, I think the future is really bright.
Dave, thanks for that closing thought. I hope my sons listen to this episode and take heed. Dave, a million thanks. Really, you're always very gracious in terms of accessibility and willing to have a conversation. So we really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Will. I really enjoyed talking today.
Thank you again.